That's right. Almost every single zombie movie was wrong. Kinda strange, seeing as there are so many films related to the genre, right? 28 Weeks Later, The Walking Dead, not a movie I know. The Cured, Zombieland, World War Z, don't even get me started on World War Z, and I Am Legend. You get the picture. All wrong. I mean, the infected were as ferocious as those of World War Z or 28 Weeks Later, and sometimes as numerous, but grouped up as The Walking Dead. Yes, in many sad and sorrowful cases, they did chew lots of people to bits. And then, still hungry, cross entire continents in incomprehensible large hordes like in Z Nation to feed on more innocent souls in greener pastures. But no, the so-called zombie apocalypse was boring. Just mind-numbingly tedious, dull, and quite literally dead boring. Most of the time. In fact, the infected became more of a nuisance than a world-ending threat. Why, you may ask? Well, the answer is more obvious than you think. Ask yourself, what have humans been doing for millennia? And what will they always continue to do until they finally do actually meet their miserable end? Kill each other. Yes, we have no qualms about dropping nuclear bombs which could incinerate hundreds of thousands of people in an instant on each other in Japan. What makes you think a person who is infected with a disease that can make them brutally savage a whole room of people, tearing them into crimson-soaked shreds of flesh, which makes a sad, squelchy sound as they hit the cold, gray floor, not die as quickly as someone who doesn't have an innate drive for human flesh and infecting others? In fact, we, as a race, were too good at killing the infected. So good, it was scary. More scary than the infected themselves. When they began to emerge into large groups that could breach a city's defenses, they could be Moabbed into the next world, which they should have passed already. Got a group of flesh-hungry freaks chasing after you? Nothing a few rounds from a general-purpose machine gun couldn't fix. Have a 250-pound bloodthirsty man-beast slamming its pulverized fist on the door of your quiet suburban home? Nothing a 9mm pistol couldn't solve. Heat-seeking missiles, miniguns, Kalashnikovs, rocket-propelled grenades, hand-tossed grenades, Apache gunships, if you were lucky, seaborne guns, even handheld weapons with a certain range, were all of use. For many across the world, when the infected came, it was just business as usual. Instead of shooting at whoever was shooting back at you, you now joined them in shooting mouth-foaming, bloodshot-eyed monsters dressed in ripped jeans. It was like a turkey shoot. Hell, the infected even promoted regional peace in some places. Israel joined Palestine together to cut down anything that dared enter the Sinai Peninsula. In Mexico, rival cartels and gangs joined together to protect the local population, at least the ones who could pay enough, from a marauding monstrosity. Even India and Pakistan set to fight together until a small border issue escalated into a nuclear holocaust the world has never seen the likes of before. The exact location of patient zero is unknown. What we do now know, however, is that the infection started to pick up pace in Zambia, being given the name Zambian rabies, then later the nickname of the Nile flu, due to its transmission down the world's longest river. After a few weeks, it was established that a local effort to curb the spread of the virus had successfully contained it to Africa. The vast majority of cases were in sub-Saharan Africa, where the ability to fight back was poor, and a few cases had sprung up on the periphery of North Africa. Despite the successful containment, it was not enough to stop the impending collapse. People did something else that they have done for millennia when they were faced with civilizational threats. They freaked. Here in Britain, the fear-fueled masses hit the supermarkets hard. They plundered the canned food and non-perishable aisles, and then ate through what was left of the perishable goods in a matter of hours. Financial institutions collapsed within the day, and the government collapsed within the week. So much for strong and stable. Martial law ensued. People got hungry, stayed indoors for days, not daring to venture outside into the chaotic new world which had been bequeathed upon them by fear. Soon they began to starve. Those with food had it taken from them by those with more firepower. Then those with firepower were slowly dealt with by those who had even more firepower, namely the army. People were rumored to have begun eating each other long before the infected showed up. Lord Henry Kitchener's new military government actions in those early days were the only thing that managed to keep some semblance of order. After the mass freakout was when the boredom began. 20% of the population had died from starvation, lack of water, or in the maelstrom of violence which followed the news of the outbreak. For me personally, it wasn't that different. For the first few hours a day, the electricity comes back on. I sit in my room, watching YouTube, or posting to Reddit. However, when the electricity goes out between 9 p.m. and 12 p.m. the next day, I sometimes wish I was fighting the infected. At least that would be somewhat entertaining. Life is somewhat normal now. You can go to the shop and exchange your ration token for some bread, vegetables, and meat. A bit like how my grandfather described the jolly old days of the Blitz. At least they had a fighting spirit back then. You could take a stroll down the street passing a heavily armored vehicle or two. Their occupants engaged in a game of cards, rifles slung lazily on their backs. Perhaps you are entertained by more worldly pleasures. You can engage in many forms of illicit activity, which would not be fulfilled before. There were no luxury summer holidays abroad. The only aircraft flying overhead were being military in nature. No more trips to the movies. No more McDonald's drive-thru. A little TV, and certainly no more drunken nights to the local nightclub. Just boredom. The infection has spread into mainland Europe now, but it is mainly under control. Most places are holding up fine, only threatened at night when visibility is low, and infected that have been hiding during the day come out to ravage local populations. We in Britain are experiencing a sort of phony war again, just sitting and waiting for the infection to reach our shores, if we don't all die from boredom first.